Hello, everyone. Today I am going to be sharing my thoughts on the new ionnalee song, although it is two songs, but they're just different language versions of the same song, titled in English, Summer Never Ended, The Damage Was All Mine, the Swedish title being Sommaren år min och jag kommer tillbaka. I think I butchered that pronunciation, but something along those lines. And if I'm not mistaken, it's not a direct translation. She wanted to not make it, so literal. So she wanted to make a different version for the English lyrics because if you Google translate, a lot of languages, you get a very literal translation, which isn't always the actual meaning of the lyrics in Swedish or in that original language that she's probably writing this song in. I'm presuming she probably originally wrote it in her native language. And of course, this is the first time that she is giving us a song in Swedish. She has always sung in English, at least ever since her debut in 2010. I can't 100% remember if on her earlier, limited edition albums that she put out under her, government name, ionnalee, if she had any songs in Swedish on those projects. I'm not 100% sure on that, so fact check me there. I haven't listened to any of those. Unfortunately, they're kind of hard to find. They're not on streaming and things. But ionnalee, of course, was I am I, who am I? Again, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent. I do sort of wish that she would have stuck under the same stage name because when I try to explain, to people like this artist named ionnalee, it's like, oh, but yeah, she used to be gone. She used to go by this, longer name called I am I, who am I? And then it's already kind of a bizarre name to explain to people. And then, now she's going by ionnalee, but it's with an I instead of a J. I kind of wish she just stuck with the same name the whole time throughout her career, because now we're obviously not going back to the I am eras, I don't think, at least in terms of the name. However, the sound, I don't think, is going to stray too far from where she started. I don't think, especially after hearing this song, I don't think, I am I fans have to really worry about her straying too far in a different direction. Even though she's always going to experiment, she is still with her longtime collaborator Barbell, aka Claes Bjorklund. And they have been just so diligently working over the last few years, bringing us a lot of new projects. We've actually had quite a lot of output from Yona in the last 3 years, with Everyone Afraid to Be Forgotten in 2018, and then in 2019, a year later, Remember the Future, which is technically her last studio album. But then in 2020, during quarantine, she put out a album, pulling together a lot of old demos and putting them out for us. So it was like a old demo album, kind of the rarities, so to speak. And with some new songs we'd never heard before. So in some ways, we got a ionnalee album just a year ago. And so now we have, a year later, a new song coming. Now, it's unknown whether this is a standalone single or if this is ahead of another album release. I really hope that there is another album coming. However, if you recall when Samaritan came out back in 2017, it was like almost a full year before the actual album for that project was released. So my hope, and I know some people might be like, well, don't you want her to be like quick with things? My hope is that she doesn't rush this album so much, because I do feel like maybe Remember the Future might have been a bit rushed to be put out. That's just my own personal opinion. And I would like to see her take a little bit more time with these projects. So I wouldn't mind if, we start getting new songs over the course of this year leading up to a new album, but I wouldn't expect that album to happen in 2021. Me personally, I'm just not feeling like we're anywhere close to it yet. But who knows? Maybe there's an album coming as early as this summer, but I highly doubt it's coming that soon. There is also the chance that maybe she's not really thinking in forms of albums anymore, or at least for the time being, and maybe wants to go the EP route. Or, and I really don't like when artists do this, but I, can't fault them for it, if she just wants to drop standalone singles and just sort of just go from project to project very quickly that way. I really hope that we don't see just a ton of standalone singles and no album announcement in the future, though, from her, because I don't like when artists do that. I just find it very messy. But that's just a personal thing. She can do what she wants. So with all that being said, like I said, we have two versions of this song. They are the exact same length by 1 second difference. So they're pretty much the exact same song when you listen to the audio. However, if you watch the music video, I was assuming after I'd seen the first music video and as soon as the couple frames into the second version, I saw the English version first, that it was going to be exactly the same. But there is a slight difference at the end of the Swedish version. The end of the Swedish version, it ends with her actually walking into the forest. And in the end of the English version, we don't have those shots. So it's an interesting little addition that has me thinking again that, we're heading into another era. It's a very transitory sort of feeling at that end of that video. And I think it's interesting she chose to put it in one and not the other, especially since it's not in the English version, which gives you a feeling that this song is probably meant to be listened to in Swedish. And I think a lot of people have been saying the Swedish version just sounds a little bit more rooted and a little bit more natural. I will say this, I wasn't 100% on board with this song when I first heard it, and I am still, as of, this song only coming out a few days ago, getting adjusted to it. The first half of this song is very stagnant in a certain melodic sense. A lot of that main line, "Summer never ended, the damage was all mine," there is no note change up. It's just one line, syncopated. And a lot of the lyrics follow that structure until the midway point, where we start getting some dance synths coming in that I think are very reminiscent of, for me, the Blue era or her Blue album, which is one of her poppier projects under the I Am I moniker. And so we transitioned into a sound that is very reminiscent for me of a lot of songs off of that record, along with some of the visuals that we get. We're getting a lot of these big open vistas. I really, really love the image of her just in her traditional white midsummer dress. For those of you who are not familiar in Scandinavia, particularly in Sweden, it's very popular to dress in the countryside in these very beautiful, pure white dresses, the women at least, wearing flower crowns for the Midsummer Festival. Of course, the film Midsummer comes to mind as well. That's sort of popularized, I think, that image in mainstream now after that horror film came out from Ari Aster 2 years ago. And I think it's easy to can make some parallels. The whole visual does have a little bit of a Midsummer feel, but again, it's, not copying that by any means. Midsummer is just capitalizing off of something that's very Swedish. And then the visual shows her trying to get into a moving car driven by, I don't think it's really shown, the driver isn't really shown, but it's a man. And she gets in the car and is sort of looking out the window in this just giant field. And then this little girl comes in, or this little girl's already in the car, excuse me. And it's apparently her little niece, her 2-year-old niece, who she has, as well as her sister, who also comes in and interacts with the little girl. And I think, it's interpreted to understand that that little girl is Yona herself when she was very young. So she's sort of just like staring at her in the car from the front seat. And then eventually someone, like I said, the sister comes in and, takes the little girl out of the car. And then Yona gets out of the car and goes in a different direction towards the ocean. And so we've got a lot of those, again, familiar sweeping ocean vistas that we're familiar with on the Blue visuals. The clean, epic cinematography is just always so on point. The choreography of her on that boardwalk in the, marsh reeds. Oh, it's very much what I think all of us have been wanting to see for a while from her, because it's just, again, so artfully put together to create a narrative that is very abstract, that we probably won't know all of the pieces until we see the finished product. And even years to come, we'll be still dissecting, because there's so much, obviously, that she doesn't explain about her work. And sometimes people, it leads them to sort of go down the rabbit hole in terms of theories. I think a lot of people I've seen have been thinking that this album is, this song and the visuals for it is alluding to the fact that she had a miscarriage sometime before Bounty came out in 2010. And a lot of people have been thinking that the whole Bounty and Kin, visual series is alluding to that, because there's images of like babies and children and wombs and things like that. So she could be alluding back to that. This is obviously a very personal story that she is sharing with us. Just going over the lyrics here. I connect the patches, calculate the risk, cannot see a pattern, letting go of this, lean on nobody's shoulder, rip it all into bits. Summer never ended, the damage was all mine. Nobody's really dancing systematic joy. Synthetical substances breaking through the noise. Embracing facts, I let the drops from my chin linger and overflow this rising brook. For the chorus, summer never ended, the damage was all mine. Melodies discoloring, my dreams were a lifeline. Flickering of fragments, almost painting an outline. Gone in lucid dreaming, and I can't find my way back. In the final verse, so it's all periodic, maybe absolute. They can claim the rights to my exploited truth. Intentions scattering like hymns in the meadows, a hazy, dissonant, rhyming excuse. Like with all of her very wonderfully penned lyricism, I have quite a hard time breaking through the sort of obtuse nature of it. And I do think that there's a rhyme and reason to it. You know, it's not always meant to be so deeply, deeply dissected, in my personal opinion. It's more meant to be about the emotion that you read upon, that you feel upon reading the lyrics. Each phrase having its own sort of poetic weight to it. But putting it all together and summarizing it can be quite a challenge. We're getting lots of different threads here. You know, the overall theme of, summer never ended, the damage was all mine, or summer never ended, though I heard the warning, she says in another part of the chorus. I do get the feeling that she is again referring to childhood. She is referring to lost innocence. She is referring to memories that appear very golden and precious to her, as I think most of our memories of childhood would be. And the phrase "summer never ended, the damage was all mine" has, in my opinion, to do with the fact that I think at a certain point, when you reckon with the way you've moved your life to this point, you sort of realize that this feeling of lost innocence is self-inflicted. And it's so easy to paint yourself as a victim of life's circumstance without taking any ownership of it. And so she is sort of taking some ownership, even though there are allusions to being a victim here. I mean, she sings about, they can claim the rights to my exploited truth. I feel like that could be an allusion to the press or to a critic, to the fan base, the media. And I'm not saying that she's like this huge media figure, but at the same time, words can get misconstrued. But I think the overall gist, what I'm getting from the lyrics here, is that in nostalgia and in reflection that can be quite melancholic about the past, you do come to a feeling of as though dreams are overtaking you, that you feel completely lost in these memories and you want to be very protective of them. But you know that the outside world is very noisy. The calls to be present in it can be very distracting. It can be very harsh and brutal. And so it can cause you to self-destruct and turn against yourself in a very sort of depressive way. And it in turn kind of it cannibalizes the inner child inside of you. And Yona is just yearning to reconnect and not have such a dissonance with that childhood innocence that I think all of us as adults need to really keep a connection with, because growing up doesn't mean that you have to completely lose entirely the childlike wonder and imagination that you had when things were a little less complicated in how you viewed the world. And you weren't being pulled in so many different directions. And so I think she's also alluding to the cyclical nature of summer and how this always comes. Maybe summer is just a time of year where she gets very nostalgic, particularly for childhood. And so it comes and it goes, a hazy, dissonant, rhyming excuse. I mean, again, there's a lot of little lines that I just want to like pick apart on their own and sort in their own context, not including the verse that it's coming from, dissect and appreciate for its own beauty, rather than it's so hard when you put them all together, like, how does this all fit? So on that note, I'd be very curious to hear what your thoughts are on this track. Are you excited for new music? Are you a fan of the direction that she is going, as we've heard in this new song sonically? Because, for me, the first thing I go to for her especially is the sonics, because I have a hard time, understanding some of her English lyrics, because she has a very unique way of, delivering the song, the notes, the vocals in each of her songs. that can be somewhat processed in parts and distorted. And also because the electronic backing, the synth backing can be just so atmospheric and entrancing that it sort of lifts you up beyond what she might be singing. And so for me, I get a lot of that with this song, especially towards the end. I find myself not even really paying attention somewhat. It's like she's the metronome, and that's just the backing beat to the beautiful synth swelling that is going on around, the beats and the melodies that are being used instrumentally here. So those are my thoughts, and I will let that be what it is because I could go on and on about this, but this video is already getting quite long for just one track. But like I said, I do slightly prefer the Swedish version, maybe also because I just don't feel the need to nitpick about the lyrics, and I just appreciate it for what it is sonically. But like I said, it's still growing on me. I very much have no real clue what to expect from her and what she is going to give us. And if there's going to be a marked difference in her sonic experimentation going forward, or if we are going to get songs that sound a lot more like stuff she did on Blue or Afraid to Be Forgotten or Remember the Future, because there's through lines, but there is straying to, different pop territories. She's been experimenting with more pop sensibilities in certain areas. But the alternative indie flavor is very strong here still. So overall, definitely interested to see where we go from here. And those are my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you did. And I will link in the description all of my ionnalee reviews that I have done up to this point. I have reviewed all of her work, so it'll all be there for you to check out if you would like. Thank you again so much for clicking and watching this, and I will see you all in my next video. Peace, love, and light. Bye.